The Dragon Rises, a mythic realist Welsh epic by Jackal. Forward. Wales remembers its heroes differently. Not in marble statues or gilded halls, but in the wind that moves through the valleys, in the songs carried across the mountains, in the stories whispered beside fires when the night grows long and the world feels older than memory. Owain Glyndŵr is one of those stories. A man who rose from the quiet life of a nobleman to become the last native prince of Wales. A man who challenged an empire. A man who vanished into legend. His rebellion shook the foundations of England and awakened something ancient in the Welsh soul, something that had been sleeping beneath centuries of silence. This is not a dry chronicle of dates and battles. This is the story of a people who refused to be erased, a land that breathes, a dragon that stirs, a prince who became more than a man. This is the story of Wales remembering itself. Prologue: The Dragon in the Earth. Before the first sword was drawn, before the first torch was lit, before the first cry of rebellion echoed across the hills, the land itself felt the shift. Deep beneath the mountains, where old things sleep and older things dream, something stirred. A heart beat slow, ancient, heavy as stone. The red dragon, Dre Gok, coiled in the dark, its scales the color of embers buried under ash. It had slept through centuries of conquest, through the rise and fall of kings, through the slow tightening of English rule over the Welsh lands. But now the earth trembled with footsteps. Now the wind carried whispers of injustice. Now the valleys hummed with a tension that tasted like iron and smoke. The dragon opened one eye. A spark glowed in the darkness. Not yet a flame, but close. The land exhaled. The mountains listened. The rivers paused in their endless carving of stone. A name drifted through the deep places of the world. Owain. The dragon's eye brightened. It is time, the land seemed to say. Wake. And somewhere far above, in a quiet hall lit by a single hearth, a man who did not yet know he would change history lifted his head, as if hearing a distant call carried on the wind. The story begins. Wales lay under a long shadow. The mountains stood eternal, but the people beneath them lived under foreign rule. English lords controlled the courts, the land, the law. Welsh customs survived only in whispers, in the songs of bards, in the stories told to children, in the stubborn pride of farmers who refused to forget who they were. Owain Glyndŵr was born into this tension. His family carried ancient bloodlines, tracing back to the princes who once ruled the land. He grew up hearing tales of freedom, of kingdoms lost, of the dragon that once roared across the hills. But he also grew up in a world where English power pressed down like a weight on the chest. He learned to read the law in London, the very law used to suppress his people. He fought in English armies, learning the tactics of those who would one day become his enemies. He walked in two worlds, the Welsh heart and the English mind. It made him dangerous, it made him necessary, it made him inevitable. But in those early years, he did not yet know what he would become. He lived quietly on his lands at Sycharth, a nobleman respected by his people, admired by his peers, and underestimated by those who believed Wales had forgotten how to rise. The land had not forgotten, it was only waiting. And the dragon beneath the mountains listened. Owain's life might have remained peaceful if not for a single act of arrogance, a spark thrown into dry grass. Lord Grey of Ruthin, an English marcher lord with more ambition than honor, seized a portion of Owain's lands. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a mistake. It was a message. Owain sought justice through the courts. He was ignored. He appealed to the king. He was dismissed. He waited for fairness. It never came. Something old and buried shifted inside him, the same thing that stirred beneath the mountains. One evening, as the sun bled red across the hills, Owain stood outside his hall, the wind cold against his face. His wife, Marge, approached quietly, sensing the storm inside him. "You're thinking of the cost," she said. Owain didn't answer at first. He watched the last light fade behind the ridge. "If I rise," he said finally, "I may lose everything." Marge stepped beside him, her voice steady. "If you do not rise," she said, "Wales loses everything." The wind carried her words into the dark. Owain closed his eyes. The dragon opened both of its own. The next morning, beneath a sky heavy with autumn clouds, villagers gathered in the valley. Farmers, shepherds, craftsmen, bards, a people who had lived quietly under English rule for too long. Owain stood before them. Not yet a prince, not yet a legend, just a man wronged by a powerful lord. But when he spoke, something ancient moved through the crowd. "If justice will not come from the crown," he said, "then justice will come from us." A murmur rippled through the valley. Old men straightened their backs. Young men clenched their fists. Women held their children close, sensing history turning beneath their feet. Then someone shouted, "Long live the Prince of Wales!" The valley erupted. Owain did not silence them. He let the roar wash over him, the sound of a nation remembering itself. The dragon beneath the mountains lifted its head. The rebellion had begun. The rebellion spread like fire through dry grass. Word traveled faster than riders carried by bards, by whispers, by the wind itself. Villages that had lived quietly under English rule for generations now stirred with something fierce and long forgotten. Men sharpened old blades. Women hid food and blankets for the fighters. Children watched the hills with wide eyes, waiting for the first sign of Welsh banners. Owain moved through the land like a storm gathering strength. He knew the terrain better than any English commander. He knew the valleys where sound carried strangely, the forests where a man could vanish, the marshes that swallowed horses whole. And the land knew him. There were nights when the wind seemed to shift as he passed, carrying the faintest echo of something ancient, a growl beneath the mountains, a whisper in the stones. Some said it was imagination. Others said it was the dragon waking. Owain did not speak of it, but he felt it. A pressure in the air, a presence in the earth, a heartbeat beneath his feet. The first true battle came at dawn. The English marched into the valley with the confidence of men who believed Wales was already theirs. Their armor gleamed. Their banners snapped in the wind. Their horses snorted clouds of steam into the cold morning air. Owain watched from the ridge above. His men crouched low beside him. The valley was quiet, too quiet. A young fighter whispered, "Do you hear that?" Owain did. Not birds, not wind, not the usual morning sounds. The valley was holding its breath. He raised his hand. The Welsh rose from the bracken like ghosts. Arrows flew. The first volley struck before the English even understood they were under attack. Men fell screaming, clutching at shafts buried in their throats. Horses reared, eyes rolling white. The English commander shouted orders, but the valley swallowed his voice. Owain charged. The clash was not heroic. It was mud, blood, and panic. A Welshman tackled an English knight into the river, holding him under as the man thrashed, bubbles rising like desperate prayers. Another English soldier slipped in the mud, begging for mercy as a spear found his ribs. Owain cut down a boy whose helmet had fallen off. He couldn't have been older than 16. For a moment, Owain froze. Then he forced himself forward. War did not care about age. War only cared about the dead. When the valley finally fell silent, the mist hung low over the bodies. The river ran red. The crows circled overhead, patient and unhurried. Owain stood in the mud, chest heaving, blood dripping from his sword. He whispered, "How many more?" The land did not answer, but the dragon beneath the mountain stirred. The rebellion grew bolder. Owain struck at English strongholds with precision, not with brute force, but with cunning. He used the land as a weapon, He used the weather. He used fear. The English called him a phantom, a shadow, a ghost in the hills. They were not entirely wrong. There were nights when Owain moved through the forests with such silence that even his own men swore they heard footsteps behind them, footsteps that did not belong to any living soldier. Some said the CW circumflexen Annwn, the hounds of the otherworld, followed him. Others said the spirits of ancient Welsh kings walked at his side. Owain said nothing, but when the wind howled through the trees, he sometimes felt he was not alone. The English retaliated with cruelty. They burned villages suspected of aiding the rebellion. They hanged farmers from their own doorframes. They salted fields. They took hostages. One night, Owain stood on a ridge overlooking a valley lit by flames. English soldiers had set fire to the harvest fields, the winter's lifeline. A farmer fell to his knees beside him, sobbing, "My children, what will they eat?" Owain knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We will find a way." But inside, he felt something break. This wasn't war. This was starvation as a weapon. And it worked. The French alliance came like a breath of hope. One morning, sails appeared on the horizon, white against the gray sea. Villagers gathered on the cliffs, watching armored knights disembark like figures from legend. Owain rode forward to greet them. "Welcome to Wales," he said. "Let us make history together." For a moment, hope felt tangible. But alliances are fragile, and hope is a dangerous thing. The council at Harlech was held during a storm. Thunder rolled across the sea. Lightning flashed against the castle walls. Inside, the council chamber was lit by a single brazier. Owain sat at the head of the table. His captains argued, voices sharp, tempers frayed. Rhys Gethin slammed his fist down. "We cannot trust the French. They come when it suits them and vanish when it does." Another captain spat back. "Without them, we are outnumbered 10-1. Owain raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. "We trust no one but Wales," he said. "The French are a tool, nothing more. If they help us, good. If they leave, we continue. This rebellion does not live or die by foreign swords." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, sharp, determined, unbroken. For a moment, he looked less like a man and more like a prophecy. But betrayal came from within. It always does. Owain entered the Black Monastery expecting allies. He found death instead. The feast laid out before him smelled wrong, too sweet, too heavy. A bard tasted the wine first. He collapsed instantly, foam bubbling at his lips. Owain's captains drew their swords. The noble hosting the feast stepped back, hands trembling. I had no choice. They threatened my family." Owain's voice was ice. "And so you tried to kill mine." The noble fell to his knees. Owain turned to his men. "Burn this place, leave nothing standing." The noble screamed as the torches were thrown. Owain did not look back. The English tightened their grip. They captured Owain's wife Marge and his daughters. They killed his sons. They burned Sicharth, his ancestral home, to the ground. Owain watched the flames from a distant ridge, his face carved from stone. A young soldier whispered, "My prince, you're home." Owain did not look away from the fire. "A home can be rebuilt," he said. "A nation must be reclaimed." But when he later found a letter from Marge in the ruins of a burned wagon, his hands shook as he opened it. "My beloved, if this reaches you, know that I am alive though imprisoned. Do not come for me. Do not risk Wales for my sake. Fight. Even if I cannot stand beside you, my heart does. Marge." Owain pressed the letter to his forehead. For the first time in years, he wept. Not for himself, for her. The land itself seemed to mourn. One night, as Owain stood on the battlements of Harlech, he heard a wail, long, piercing, inhuman. The soldiers whispered, "The banshee, the girach, why ribbon?" Moments later, a messenger arrived. "My prince, news from the east. Your son Gruffud, he has fallen." Owain closed his eyes. The banshee wailed again. And this time he understood. It wasn't a monster. It was Wales itself mourning its children. The winter that followed was the harshest Wales had seen in decades. Snow buried the valleys. Ice sealed the rivers. The wind howled through the mountains like a wounded animal. Owain's men huddled in caves and abandoned farmhouses, sharing scraps of food and stories to keep their spirits alive. The English believed the cold would break the rebellion. They did not understand Wales. The land had always been harsh. The people had always endured. And now, with the dragon stirring beneath the mountains, endurance became defiance. But even defiance has a cost. One night, as the storm raged outside, Owain sat beside a dying fire, staring into the embers. The flames flickered weakly, struggling against the cold. Rhys Gethin entered, snow clinging to his cloak. "My prince," he said softly, "we lost another dozen men today. Frostbite, hunger. The cold is killing us faster than the English." Owain didn't look up. "The cold is killing them too." Rhys hesitated. "That may be true, but they have supplies, we have hope." Owain finally turned his gaze toward him. "Hope is a weapon," he said, "and we wield it better than they ever will." Rhys nodded, but his eyes betrayed his worry. Outside, the wind screamed like a banshee. When spring finally came, it brought more than thawed rivers and green shoots. It brought war. The English marched with renewed strength, determined to crush the rebellion once and for all. Their armies moved through the valleys like iron serpents, burning everything in their path. Owain met them at the broken ford. The river was swollen with melted snow, the current fierce and unforgiving. Owain's men held the far bank, shields locked, spears braced. The English charged through the water, their armor dragging them down, their horses struggling against the current. The first impact was thunderous. Spears snapped, shields splintered. Men screamed as they were dragged under the water, trampled by horses or drowned by the weight of their own armor. Owain fought like a man possessed. He saw one of his captains fall, throat opened by an English blade. He saw another man slip on the rocks and vanish beneath the current. The river ran red. When the English finally retreated, the ford was choked with bodies, Welsh and English alike, tangled together in death. Owain stood in the water, chest heaving, blood dripping from his sword. He whispered, "How many more?" The river did not answer. But the dragon beneath the mountain stirred again. The French returned briefly. Their ships landed at Milford Haven, bringing soldiers, supplies, and a flicker of hope. Villagers lined the shores, watching armored knights disembark like figures from legend. Owain rode forward to greet them. "Welcome to Wales," he said. "Let us make history together." For a moment, hope felt tangible. But alliances are fragile. The French withdrew when their own wars demanded attention. Their departure left a hollow ache in the rebellion, a reminder that Wales stood alone. Owain did not curse them. He had expected nothing more. But his men felt the loss like a wound. The English tightened their grip. They sent spies into Owain's camp, Welshmen bribed or threatened into betrayal. One such man was dragged before Owain, trembling, eyes darting. "You carried messages to the English," Owain said. The man swallowed. "They threatened my son." Owain's jaw tightened. "We all have sons." The man broke down. "Please, I didn't want to, I didn't." Owain raised a hand. "Silence. Take him away." The man screamed as he was dragged out. Owain turned to his captains. "We are not fighting an army," he said. "We are fighting fear." He looked toward the mountains. And fear is the hardest enemy to kill. The land itself seemed to shift as the war dragged on. There were nights when the forests whispered, nights when the mist moved strangely, Nights when the men swore they saw shapes in the darkness, white hounds with glowing eyes, watching from the tree line. The CW circumflexen anon. The hounds of the otherworld. One night as Owain led a small band through the forest, the howls began deep, mournful, echoing through the trees. A young soldier whispered, "The hounds, they're coming for us." Owain shook his head. "No, they're coming for them." Moments later, the English patrol ahead of them froze. The mist thickened. White shapes moved between the trees. The English screamed. When the mist cleared, they were gone. Owain's men crossed themselves. Owain simply nodded. Wales had its own ways of fighting. But even the land could not protect everyone. Owain's daughters were captured, his wife imprisoned, his sons killed. The English believed this would break him. They did not understand the man they were fighting. Owain stood on a ridge overlooking a valley lit by flames. The English had burned Sicharth, his ancestral home. A young soldier whispered, "My prince, you're home." Owain did not look away from the fire. "A home can be rebuilt," he said. "A nation must be reclaimed." But when he later found a letter from Marged in the ruins of a burned wagon, his hands shook as he opened it. "My beloved, if this reaches you, know that I am alive though imprisoned. Do not come for me. Do not risk Wales for my sake. Fight. Even if I cannot stand beside you, my heart does. Marged." Owain pressed the letter to his forehead. For the first time in years, he wept. Not for himself, for her. The English believed they were winning. They did not see the dragon waking. One night Owain slept in a ruined chapel, the wind howling through broken windows. He dreamed. A vast red dragon rose from the mountains, wings unfurling like storm clouds. Its eyes burned with ancient fire. It spoke without words. "You are not the first, you will not be the last, but you are the spark." Owain reached out. The dragon lowered its head. "Wales does not die." Owain woke with tears on his face. He knew what he had to do. The dream of the dragon stayed with Owain long after he woke. It clung to him like smoke, like the scent of fire on a cloak. He felt it in the weight of the air, in the tremor beneath the soil, in the way the wind curled around the stones, as if whispering secrets older than kingdoms. He did not speak of the dream to his men. Some things were not meant for mortal ears. Some visions belonged to the land itself. But he carried it with him, a fire in his chest, a shadow at his back. And the land responded. There were days when the clouds moved strangely, swirling in patterns that mirrored the dragon's wings. Days when the rivers ran faster, as if hurrying to deliver messages. Days when the mountains seemed to hum with a low, ancient resonance. The bards noticed, the old women noticed, the children noticed. Wales was waking. The English, sensing the shift, grew desperate. They tightened their grip on the land, sending patrols into every valley, every forest, every village. They hunted Owain's supporters with ruthless efficiency. They burned homes, seized livestock, and dragged suspected rebels into makeshift prisons. One such prison was a fortified manor in the east, a place where Welsh captives were held in darkness, their cries echoing through the stone halls. Owain learned of it from a shepherd boy who had escaped through a drainage tunnel. The boy's face was pale, his voice trembling. They keep them in the cellar," he whispered. "They beat them, they starve them. They say they'll break Wales one man at a time." Owain placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You did well," he said. "Now rest." That night Owain led a small band through the forest, moving like shadows between the trees. The moon was hidden behind clouds, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. When they reached the manor, Owain signaled for silence. The guards at the gate were half asleep, their torches burning low. Owain's men dispatched them quickly, their bodies falling without a sound. Inside, the manor was dark. Too dark. Owain descended the stone steps into the cellar, the air growing colder with each step. The smell hit him first, rot, sweat, blood. Then he heard the whispers. "Is someone there? Please help us. Is it morning? Is it still night?" Owain lit a small lantern. The light revealed faces, gaunt, bruised, hollow-eyed. Men chained to the walls, women huddled in corners, a child curled beneath a broken table. Owain's jaw tightened. "We're getting you out," he said. The prisoners stared at him as if he were a vision. One man whispered, Are you him, the prince?" Owain didn't answer. He didn't need to. His men broke the chains, lifted the weak, carried the wounded. They moved quickly, silently, like ghosts. But as they reached the courtyard, a horn sounded. The English had awakened. Torches flared, shouts echoed, steel clashed. Owain fought with a fury that bordered on something otherworldly. His blade moved with precision, each strike fueled by the sight of the prisoners' suffering. The English fell one by one. When the last soldier collapsed, the courtyard was silent except for the ragged breathing of the rescued. Owain looked at them, at their bruises, their hollow cheeks, their trembling hands. "This," he said softly, "is why we fight." The dragon beneath the mountain stirred. But the English were not done. They struck back with a cruelty that chilled even their own allies. One night, as Owain's men camped in a narrow valley, the English launched a surprise attack. They came from both sides, torches blazing, arrows raining down like fire. Owain's men scrambled for cover, shields raised, voices shouting in the chaos. A young soldier fell beside Owain, an arrow buried in his chest. His eyes were wide with fear. "Am I dying?" he whispered. Owain knelt beside him, gripping his hand. "Not yet," he said. "Stay with me." But the boy's breath grew shallow. His eyes dimmed. Owain closed them gently. The battle raged around him, but for a moment, all he heard was the wind. The dragon's heartbeat echoed faintly beneath the earth. The English believed they had broken the rebellion. They had not. They had only awakened something older, something deeper, something that had slept beneath the mountains for centuries. The land itself began to fight. Storms struck English camps with unnatural ferocity. Fog rolled in without warning, swallowing entire patrols. Rivers flooded at the exact moment Welsh fighters needed escape. Trees fell across roads used by English supply wagons. The English called it coincidence. The Welsh called it justice. Owain called it Wales. But even as the land fought beside him, Owain felt the weight of loss growing heavier. His sons were dead, his daughters imprisoned, his wife held in chains, his home burned, his people suffering. One night, he stood alone on a cliff overlooking the valley where he had first been proclaimed prince. The moon cast a pale glow over the land, illuminating the scars of war. Owain closed his eyes. He heard the wind, he heard the river, he heard the distant cry of an owl. And beneath it all, he heard the dragon. A low, rumbling growl, not of anger but of sorrow. Owain whispered into the night, "I did what I could. The rest belongs to those who come after." The wind carried his words across the valley. The dragon listened. The war dragged on, and with each passing season, Owain felt the weight of time pressing against him. His hair grew streaked with gray. His face hardened, carved by wind and grief. But his eyes, those fierce, ember-bright eyes, never dimmed. He became something more than a man to his people. A symbol, a prophecy, a reminder that Wales had not forgotten how to fight. But symbols carry burdens that flesh cannot bear forever. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Owain met with his remaining captains in a ruined farmhouse. The roof had collapsed long ago, leaving only charred beams and the smell of old smoke. Rhys Gethin spread a crude map across a broken table. "The English are tightening their net," he said. "They're pushing from the east and the south, If they close the gap, we'll be trapped. Owain studied the map in silence. Another captain spoke, his voice strained. We've lost too many. We can't keep fighting like this. Owain looked up. We don't fight because we can win, he said. We fight because we must. The men fell silent. Outside, the wind whispered through the broken walls. Rhys lowered his voice. My prince, the men are tired. They need something to believe in. Owain stepped outside, staring at the darkening sky. They have Wales, he said, and Wales has me. But even as he spoke the words, he felt the truth beneath them. He was running out of time. The English launched a massive offensive that summer, a campaign designed not to defeat Owain in battle, but to starve him, isolate him, erase him. They burned fields, they poisoned wells, they seized livestock, they hunted his supporters with relentless cruelty. Villages that had once sung his name now whispered it in fear. Owain moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough for the English to corner him. He slept in caves, in barns, in abandoned chapels. He ate whatever the land offered, roots, berries, the occasional rabbit. His men dwindled. Some died, some were captured, some simply vanished into the mountains, unable to bear the weight of war any longer. But Owain did not break. He could not. The dragon beneath the mountain still stirred. One night, as Owain and a handful of loyal fighters camped in a narrow ravine, a storm rolled in sudden, violent, unnatural. The wind howled like a living thing. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the earth. Owain stood in the rain, cloak whipping in the wind, staring up at the storm with an expression that was not fear, but recognition. Rhys shouted over the wind, "We need shelter." Owain didn't move. The storm intensified, swirling above them like a vortex. Then for a moment, just a heartbeat, the clouds parted. A red glow pulsed within the storm. Not lightning, not fire, something older. Owain's men fell to their knees. The dragon, one whispered. Owain raised his face to the sky. The glow brightened, swirling like wings unfurling. The storm roared. Then the clouds closed again, and the night returned to darkness. Owain lowered his head. It's not over, he said softly, not yet. But the English were relentless. They captured more of his supporters. They executed rebels in town squares. They offered rewards for information. They spread rumors that Owain had fled, that he had surrendered, that he had died. None of it was true. But truth mattered little in war. Fear mattered more. One evening, Owain met a group of villagers who had once sheltered him. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. We can't help you anymore, one man said, voice trembling. They'll kill us, they'll kill our children. Owain nodded. I understand. The man's voice cracked. Forgive us. Owain placed a hand on his shoulder. There is nothing to forgive. But as he walked away, he felt the ache of it, the slow erosion of hope, the quiet surrender of those who had once believed. He did not blame them. He blamed the world that forced them to choose between survival and loyalty. The English believed they had cornered him. They believed the rebellion was dying. They believed Wales was finally breaking. They were wrong. Owain still had one weapon left. The land. One night, as English forces marched through a narrow pass known as the Raven's Gate, the air grew unnaturally still. The torches flickered. The horses snorted nervously. The commander frowned. Something's wrong. He was right. Owain's men waited in the cliffs above, hidden among the rocks. Owain raised his hand. Silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then a single arrow fell. It struck the lead knight in the throat. He toppled from his horse, choking on blood. Chaos erupted. Welsh arrows rained down like a storm of black feathers. English soldiers screamed, shields raised too late. Horses reared, eyes wild with terror. Owain watched from the ridge, his face carved from stone. "No mercy," he said, "not tonight." His men surged forward, blades drawn, voices rising in a roar that echoed through the pass. The English line broke. The night swallowed them, and the dragon roared. But victory was fleeting. The English regrouped, they pressed harder, they hunted Owain with renewed fury. And slowly, inevitably, the rebellion began to fracture. Not from defeat, from exhaustion. Owain felt it in his bones. The land still fought beside him, the dragon still stirred, but men were not made of stone. They bled, they broke, they died. And Owain knew the end was coming. Not the end of Wales, never that, but the end of his part in its story. The end did not come with a final battle. It came with silence. A slow, creeping silence that spread across the valleys like mist. The English tightened their grip, but the rebellion did not collapse in a single moment. It faded, piece by piece, like a fire burning down to embers. Owain's forces dwindled to a handful of loyal fighters, men who had followed him through storms, through blood, through betrayal, through the long dark nights when hope felt like a memory. They moved through the mountains like ghosts, avoiding English patrols, living off the land, sleeping beneath the open sky. Owain no longer sought victory. He sought survival not for himself, but for the idea he had ignited. Wales, a nation that refused to die. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, Owain and his men reached a remote valley, a place untouched by war, hidden between steep cliffs and dense forest. A shepherd greeted them, his face weathered by wind and time. "You're safe here," he said quietly, "for now." Owain nodded. "Thank you." The shepherd hesitated, then added, "My father told me stories of you, said you were chosen by the land itself." Owain looked out across the valley, where the grass swayed gently in the breeze. "I was chosen by necessity," he said. "The land chooses no man, it only remembers." The shepherd bowed his head. "Then it will remember you." Owain said nothing, but the wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of a growl from deep beneath the mountains. The English searched for him relentlessly. They scoured the forests, they questioned villagers, they offered rewards, they threatened entire communities. But Owain had become something else, something the English could not track or trap. A shadow, a whisper, a legend. There were sightings, always vague, always uncertain. A figure seen crossing a ridge at dusk, a cloaked man speaking to a farmer before vanishing into the mist, a warrior on horseback glimpsed in the forest, his cloak billowing like smoke. The English dismissed these as superstition. The Welsh did not. One night Owain sat alone beside a small fire, the flames flickering weakly in the cold air. His men slept nearby, exhausted from days of travel. Owain stared into the fire, lost in thought. He saw faces in the flames. His sons, his daughters, Marge, Rhys Gethin, the men who had died at the broken ford, the villagers who had suffered for his cause. He felt the weight of them, not as guilt, but as memory. A rustle came from the trees. Owain did not reach for his sword. He knew the sound. A figure stepped into the firelight, an old woman, her hair white as frost, her eyes dark and deep. A wise woman, a seer, one of the old ones. "Owain ap Gruffud," she said softly, "the land calls you." Owain met her gaze. "I have given everything I can." She shook her head. "You have given what was needed. Now you must give what remains." Owain frowned. "What remains?" The woman stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your disappearance." Owain felt the words like a blade. "You want me to vanish." "Not want," she said. "Need. A dead prince is a defeated symbol, a vanished prince is a prophecy. Owain looked into the fire. And what becomes of Wales? The woman smiled, a small, knowing smile. Wales endures because you endured. Owain closed his eyes. The dragon stirred beneath the mountains. The next morning, Owain's men awoke to find him gone. His cloak lay folded beside the ashes of the fire. His sword rested atop it. No tracks led away from the camp. No sign of struggle. No trace of where he had gone. It was as if the land itself had swallowed him. His men searched for days. Villagers searched for weeks. The English searched for years. They found nothing. Owain Glyndŵr had vanished. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he had fled to France. Some said he had died in the mountains. Some said he lived in disguise among the people he had fought for. Some said he had been taken by the fair folk into the other world. But the most persistent rumor, the one whispered by shepherds, by bards, by old women with eyes like storm clouds, was this: Owain had not died. He slept, deep in a hidden cave beneath the mountains, surrounded by ancient stone and the heartbeat of the land. He waited. For the right moment, for the right generation, for the right spark. The dragon watched over him. And in the darkest nights, when storms howled across the hills, some swore they heard a voice carried on the wind. Not yet, but soon. The English believed they had won. They had not. They had only paused the story. Wales remembered, the land remembered, the dragon remembered. And somewhere in the deep places of the world, Owain Glyndŵr, last Prince of Wales, waited for the day when his people would need him again. The fire he lit never died. It smoldered beneath the mountains. It glowed in the hearts of the people. It whispered in the wind. A promise. A warning. A prophecy. Wales does not die. Years passed. The valleys healed slowly, though the scars of war lingered in the stones and in the memories of those who had lived through it. Children grew up hearing stories of the rebellion, stories whispered by firelight, sung by wandering bards, woven into the fabric of Welsh identity. Owain Glyndŵr became more than a man. He became a question, a hope, a warning, a promise. The English chroniclers wrote of him with frustration, a rebel who refused to be captured, a ghost who slipped through their fingers, a nuisance who would not die. The Welsh spoke of him differently. They said he walked the hills at dusk. They said he appeared to shepherds in the mist. They said he whispered to the rivers, urging them to remember. They said he slept beneath the mountains, waiting for the day when Wales would need him again. No grave was ever found. No body, no bones, no proof of death. Only stories. And stories are harder to kill than men. In the generations that followed, Wales endured hardship, oppression, famine, and silence. But through it all, the memory of Owain Glyndŵr remained, not as a relic of the past, but as a living ember. A spark waiting for breath. There were moments, uprisings, protests, songs rising from crowds when the people felt something stir beneath their feet. A tremor, a heartbeat, a whisper. Some said it was the dragon. Some said it was Owain. Some said it was Wales itself. Perhaps they were all the same. One stormy night, centuries after the rebellion, an old shepherd climbed a ridge overlooking the valley where Owain had first been proclaimed prince. The wind howled, tearing at his cloak. Lightning flashed across the sky. He leaned on his staff, staring into the darkness. And then he heard it. A low, distant rumble, not thunder, not wind, something deeper, something alive. The ground beneath him vibrated, just for a moment. He looked toward the mountains. A red glow pulsed beneath the clouds. The shepherd fell to his knees. "It's him," he whispered. "He's waking." The wind carried his words across the valley. The mountains listened. The dragon stirred. In the deep places of the world, where stone remembers and time moves like water, a figure sleeps. His cloak is dust, his sword is rust, but his heartbeat is steady, slow, ancient, patient. Above him, the dragon coils around the roots of the mountains, its breath warm against the stone. Its eyes glow faintly in the darkness. It watches, it waits, it remembers. One day, when the land cries out, when the valleys tremble, when the people whisper his name not as history but as need, Owain Glyndŵr will open his eyes. The dragon will rise, and Wales, fierce, unbroken, eternal, will remember itself once more. For Wales does not die, it only sleeps.